So, Glenn, I'm going to have you introduce yourself. I wanted to have you here today. Thank you for being a part of my new venture into podcasts. But I think you have some really great information that you could share that could potentially help some of my friends, family, and followers with their own credit issues. So, introduce yourself and tell us what you do.
Yeah, so I'm Glenn. I own D&G Financial Consulting, and basically what I do is I help people out of bad credit situations into kind of financial success, whether that looks like buying a car, buying a house, reducing the interest rates on large purchases, or any of the other, whatever financial success looks like for these people, I can help them achieve that. And the first kind of stepping stone is understanding that good credit gets you to those items. And so I kind of help people to move to their financial freedom path.
Right.
And as you and I both know, credit is a huge step or a huge kind of key to that door. And so we help people do that.
All right. Yeah, absolutely. I would agree. I kind of mentioned to you before, my parents, I grew up in a household where my parents never had good credit. I don't know that they didn't understand the importance of good credit or really what happened and how they got on that path. Unfortunately, they were never able to get off it. They never owned a home. I never remember them going to a dealership and buying a car. They always had to just kind of come to get the money and buy it cash. So tell me a little bit, when I turned 18, I knew the importance of good credit because I had seen the mistakes that they had made. So I got very lucky and right away, worked really hard to develop, good habits so that I can have good credit fairly quickly. But tell me a little bit about your story and your history and why you got into this business of credit repair.
Yeah. So when I was 18, everybody's dream, every young boy's dream when they're 18 is to get the motorcycle, right? And so accident happened and my lawyer was like, don't pay your medical bills, right? We're going to go after them. We're going to get their money, right? And so I thought, this guy's a lawyer, right? He knows what he's talking about. And wouldn't you know it, I ended up with my own medical collections. And I checked my credit and I was at a 580. And I just thought, well, that's my life now, right? Credit doesn't matter. I've got a few $100. I can buy whatever I need.
Yeah.
Who really cares, right?
Right.
And so when I bought my first truck, I had an interest rate of 18%, which is, if you don't know anything, that's not a big number. It doesn't really matter, right? And so I remember kind of looking at, money was getting tight and I was like, well, how does this payment work? Like I thought my payment was going to be, so much. And it seems like a little bit more. Well, I looked at the interest rate and I realized that half of my payment was interest.
Yep.
And it kind of hit me like, this is a major pain point in my life. How do I not make this painful anymore with still having my life as I know it with the car, everything else. So that was when I realized, I pulled up one of those credit simulators, right, way back in the day. And it's, if you do this, it'll move your credit, right? And I remember looking at loans, if I would have had a 700 credit score and the interest rate was single digits and, on a car payment, that can swing your payment, a couple $100.
Yeah.
And so that was when I started looking like, okay, how do I get out of this? And then, so of course, Credit Karma was just taking off. I don't remember if I used Credit Karma, one of their free services, but I remember looking and saying, oh man, those medical collections that I thought were taken care of are still there.
Yeah.
Big bright letters, big red letters, you owe these people money.
Collection.
And not even so much do you owe these people money, but we had paid it off. But because I had not paid them on time, it was still on my record. And I couldn't understand, like, my debts are settled, right? I paid this person, paid this company. And then I realized that payment history is everything that I did, whether I paid it off or not.
Yep.
It's still there. And that's something that trips up a lot of people is they think, oh, I got current, right? Just because I was late on my car payment doesn't matter. It does.
It does.
And it hurts a lot.
Yeah.
And so that's when I realized, you got to talk to these credit companies. You got to write these dispute letters. And I was able to get my credit into the mid 700s. It was able to refinance into a lower payment. And I realized that this is the key, right? This is where everyone's kind of, saving that money, making their money work for different things is the credit.
Yeah.
And that's really kind of, like I said, the key for financial success or financial independence, financial freedom, whatever, buzzword people are using these days. Yeah, it's good credit.
Good credit. And you said that you had a FICO score or credit score of about 580 and then you got it up into the 700s. How long did that take you to do about? That's a pretty significant jump.
It is. And it took me about 2 years. And that's because I didn't know what I was doing.
Yeah.
And I didn't know to Google. I didn't know what a dispute letter was. I didn't know any of this stuff, right? And so I was always told, probably like you, pay your bills on time and everything's okay, right?
Yeah.
And you'll have a 700, 750 credit score, whatever. Well, that's not true. And a lot of people think that. And a lot of people think that they can, kind of just do the age-old methods, right? And so I just kind of was like, oh, well, I'll just keep building credit and these collections will fall off after 7 years, whatever. Well, then, fast forward 6 months, I was like, this is terrible. So I reached out and I called the hospital. And of course, there's nothing they can do, right? It's already been in collections, whatever. And so, I think I kind of was just like, well, this is hopeless. And there were many times where I was like, this is it. Like, I just have a low credit score. And then I was like, well, let me see. Let me just call these people. And to my surprise, a lot of times, just talking to people like, oh, you need to try this and this will work. Or I would go on Google and I would just Google medical collections gone, right?
So you're kind of self-taught. You taught yourself how to do credit repair.
I did.
That's probably the best way, right? The best method is trial and error. What worked after you trying over and over and over again?
I did. And unfortunately for most of the consumers, a lot of the credit agencies and the 3 bureaus, they're not old fashioned anymore. In fact, a lot of people don't know the credit bureaus, when you send a dispute letter, it's not even read by a human being. There's no human interaction at any point.
I had no idea.
There's actually a robot that opens the letter and folds it out and sends it through a conveyor belt, and it's read. And they look for keywords. They look for account numbers. They look for credit names, and they look for a dispute reason, right? And they pull keywords like late payment, dispute, things like that. There is no human interaction at all. And so a lot of people think they type these sob stories. Computer doesn't care.
Yeah.
Right. And so computer's just looking and scanning for these keywords like, what is the account? What problem do they say there is? And what are we going to do about it? Right.
Right.
And so a lot of people don't realize that, 5-6 years ago, yeah, you probably could write a letter. And even before then, it's automated, right? Because you have to remember there's, millions and millions of consumers just in Las Vegas alone, let alone across the whole country that are trying to fight their credit and better it. And also something that I like to point out is bad credit's good for business, for everyone but the consumer, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Because then you can charge more interest. You can deny your consumers.
Like a modern day mafia, if you will, right? Well, everybody has to have a car. So if I could sell you a car at a 20% interest rate instead of the 2.9% rate that you can get if you have good credit, that's not hurting anybody except for you, because we're over here as the corporation raking in the cash.
And on top of that, a lot of people know this. So companies like Bank of America, they actually pay Equifax and TransUnion for a certain group of credit scores. Think like 5 to 570, right? Because they know those people are probably going to fall behind on their credit and they're going to make interest. So Bank of America actively recruits these credit scores because they know these people are going to fall behind on their credits. So that's why these credit cards will give out 12-month 0% interest cards, right? Thinking, oh yeah, this consumer's probably gonna go buy a TV. They're probably gonna buy a fridge, something they don't need, right? And they're like, oh, I've got 12 months. Well, here comes 10 months. Didn't worry about it. Now I've got 2 months to pay off this huge bill.
Which you probably can't do.
Exactly. And then all the interest slams from all 12 months. It accrues. So now you basically double your bill. And Bank of America or whoever, they knew that.
Yeah.
They
gave you $1,000, and at the end of the day, they're probably going to make $5,000 back on you or more because you're stuck. You're paying these monthly payments because that's really all you can afford is the minimal, and the debt is actually not even going down. And you're in this perpetual cycle.
You're essentially paying late payments at that point. And then, now they've got you for life. And then on top of that, when they're done collecting their interest or whatever, they sell it off to a creditor. They make money on the backside of that too. So now that $1,000 that it cost them, they've made, like you said, $2 or $3 grand, and they can sell it, write it off as a tax deduction. And
that's a loss. Yeah.
Exactly.
Sell it off to the debt collection company who's then going to turn and make a couple more thousand off that same person.
And debt's like an $8 trillion business right now. It's insane. It's one of the largest non-tangible assets in the entire world.
Wow. Interesting information. So, all right. So you're somebody that, you got off on the wrong foot at 18 years old or in your 20s or whatever that looks like. And now you know that you have debt or you have bad credit. Maybe you're in the 500s. Maybe you're even in the 6s and you just can't figure out how to. I know that there was a time in my 20s and 30s where I had good credit, decent credit. Maybe it was a 640 to 660, but I could never get it over that hump. And I couldn't understand. I had a house at that time. I had a car. I had credit cards. I was making my payments every month, and my score was never changing. How can you help people really take what they have, whatever that is, and help them increase it so that, the next time they are going to buy that car or that house, they can get the best interest rate just with some maybe minor tweaks?
So, and this is something that's free to do for anybody, and I don't mind giving out the advice. There's 3 real big things. The first is debt to income. You always want to stay, or excuse me, The first is your usage. You want to stay below 30%, right? And a lot of
Right.
people, everyone knows the 30% rule, right? But one thing that I'm actually just made a video about this is your credit reports on different dates for different cards, right? It's when you're closing of your statement. And that is the number that gets reported to the credit bureaus. So if you have a $10,000 card, and yeah, you may pay it off every single month, but you run up to 9,900 and it gets reported, you're at 100% usage. And
Oh,
so a lot of people, yeah, a
interesting.
lot of people don't know
So it's
that
paying attention to the actual statement date and making
exactly.
sure that if you are paying it off, you're paying it like 5 days before that statement date so that when it does report to the credit bureau, it's at that below 30%. I just want to go back really quick because I do want to make sure everybody understands. I think I would agree with you that most people probably understand what that 30% means. But what you're saying is, let's say, for example, I have that Bank of America credit card, and we're just picking on Bank of America, but we have that credit card and there's $1,000 limit. What you're saying in 30% usage is not to have that credit card charge higher than that 30% level. So let's say $300, or at least when it's when you're saying the statement cutoff date is to make sure that it's under that $300 mark in
Yes,
balance.
but it's slightly more complex than that. It's
Okay.
30% over all of your cards.
Okay.
So if you have, let's just say 10 $1,000 cards, you don't want to have more than $3,000 spread across your card, and you don't want to have more than 80% on any single card.
Okay.
And so where that comes into play is where a lot of people do the 0% balance cards and they transfer all their debts over, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so there's a whole school of thought on flipping cards and constantly having rotating debt.
Right.
But that's not for the average consumer, right? That's for someone who has their credit in check. They're bringing it back. These are your 780s to 850s
Mm-hmm.
and people that are dialed in. But what I always tell people is if you take all of your credit cards and you have one big number, you don't want more than 30% of that across all your cards.
Okay.
And you also don't want one maxed out. Maxed out is 80% or more.
Okay.
The perfect credit score is one installment loan, so a mortgage, a car payment, some tangible asset that you're paying on every single month, right?
Okay.
And 3 revolving or intangible cards. So that may be like a retail card, that may be a personal loan, something that you can't go and touch and pick up, but you're still paying on every month. Those are also called unsecured, or they could be secured lines of credit if you're doing I guess kind of it's just 3 revolving payments, right? And so credit cards are the easiest ones.
Okay.
And I always tell people too, you want to have one financial institution. You don't want to be the person that has 3 Macy's credit cards or, a Victoria's Secret credit card or 3 retail cards. You want to have one financial institution. So if you
Okay.
really want to break it down, one installment loan, one financial institution, and 2 other unsecured lines of credit.
Okay.
And if you're paying on all of those and keeping those below 30% on the reporting dates, you're going to go up.
Yeah, it's
You
gonna go
have
up
to.
fairly quickly.
But there is something that I do want to point out that a lot of people are shocked or find out. There are over 9 different ways to calculate credits. And I'm sure you deal with FICO scores a lot.
Yeah.
Whereas like your Vantage scores, I think it's 3.0 that's used by Credit Karma, is a common one. But a lot of people I hear all the time, I pulled my Credit Karma. It was a 700. I went to the
Yeah.
dealership and it was a 640.
Yeah.
Well, that's because a lot of dealerships use the Vantage score 5 or 7.
Right.
And so
I've seen people like in buying home situations where they'll tell me, yeah, my credit score is 750 on Credit Karma. And then they go to their mortgage lender and they try to get the loan and the credit is, and I've seen swings 100 points over or 100 points under. It could be huge differences.
And so, and that's a really good point, and something that people have to understand is if you want a good, accurate credit score, you're going to have to go to the credit bureaus.
Mm-hmm.
And it's free for anyone to pull a credit, right? And anyone can request a credit at any time. And it's a soft inquiry. It doesn't go, a lot of people don't want to mess with it because it might be a hard inquiry or something like that. It's not true. You're legally obligated or you're legally allowed to have your credits sent to you. And if you notify the bureaus, they have 30 days to respond.
Okay.
And so,
And that's once a year, is that right? Or as many
anytime
times
you
as you
want.
want? Oh, okay.
anytime as you want.
Another new piece of information. I feel like I've always been told that you can pull your credit once a year for free and, without it having any impact on your credit.
If that was true, you can only check your Credit Karma once a year,
Mhm.
right? Because they're doing
True.
soft inquiries every single time they update your score.
I don't have a Credit Karma.
Oh, you missed
But I
out.
do the Experian. You know how like your credit cards offer you the free credit monitoring?
Yeah.
It might not even be free. I might pay for it probably. But anyways, I have the Experian credit check.
And most major credit cards do. I know Chase, Bank of America, American Express,
Yeah.
all the major ones,
Yeah.
they can pull. American Express, I know, can pull credit and FICO.
Yep.
And so it's interesting too. Like whenever I apply for credit, I have like 6 different things to monitor. So I just get emails, just start dinging,
Mhm.
And Chase is very fast. I've yet to apply for credit in the 5 years I've owned Chase that it wasn't same day notification. Credit Karma can lag a couple days, and that's important to know because if you have someone stealing your identity, time is very precious, right?
Yeah.
And so if someone goes and applies for some kind of retail credit card, if you can stop it that day before the card's even issued and they can ring it up, it's much easier to clean up that mess than 3 or 4 days later.
Right.
And let's be honest, people aren't reading their emails every single day. They're not responding. They're not dropping what they're doing. So now you're looking at 3 or 4 days. Then
Plus 3 or 4 days or whatever.
So now that this person's had this card for a week, who knows what they've been doing, right?
So tell me a little bit about like maybe one of your recent success stories. So you have this credit consulting company now. Tell me somebody that maybe you've, obviously keeping people's names and things, whatever, secret. But, somebody that came to you, had a credit situation, you were able to assist in maybe whatever, 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, what kind of success you had with them?
So I have a couple different examples. So I had a guy, 40, I think he's 42. He's never had a credit card in his entire life.
Oh, wow.
Always cash everything, right?
Okay.
Real old school mentality.
Like old school. Credit is bad.
Yeah.
Except for now you want to buy something and
yeah,
you
well,
can't.
similar story. His parents were terrible at credit cards and he was just taught that credit cards are the devil, right?
Yeah.
And all they do is they just let you run these things up and they, charge you money. And so we sat down, we looked at his credit. His credit was, I think, 550 because he literally had one loan his entire life.
Yeah.
And so he went and got a secure credit card, $300, right? He made 3 months worth of payments. His credit is now in the 700s.
Wow.
Just small improvements. Now he's able to go look at buying a house. Lenders wouldn't even talk to him at 550.
And what does a consultation like that or the services of you helping them achieve that look like in terms of what is your cost? What does this look like if somebody was interested in having you help them?
So just a credit analysis or debt analysis is $50 flat. And if I want to do credit repair, that's included and it's a free consultation. So what I do is I sit down with the customer. It usually takes about an hour to go over everything. And it looks at what's going on because another statistic I throw out, 80% of all credit reports have something wrong on them.
Yeah.
And so I can't tell how many times I have people like, wait, what is that? And I'm like, it's been on your credit for 2 years. And like, I had no idea. You know what I mean? And so their credit's been destroyed for 2 years and they had no idea. And so we go through, we check, we see if everything's legitimate. And then we start looking at inaccuracies. I've found identity theft that people had no idea even happened and it just went into collections. And they never even looked.
Wow.
I found medical bills. I found a woman, she gave birth. She got a hospital bill. She never paid it. After insurance covered everything, was $4,000. She had a collection for $48,000.
Oh my gosh, the bill started at $4,000 and now it was at $48,000.
They never processed her insurance. The insurance never paid the back of the bill. And so that can quickly come off their credit because it's not accurate.
Yeah.
And so your credit report has to be 100% accurate or it has to be deleted.
Okay.
So a lot of people don't know that. And so unfortunately, some people will challenge or dispute their credit and the bureaus will just update it and say, well, our bad. And that's actually illegal. But unless someone kind of calls them out on it, it's kind of like when you're driving down the road, right? You're doing whatever, got the radio blaring, when the cop pulls behind you, you buckle the seatbelt right, you turn the radio down, whatever. That's the same. That's basically what I'm do. I'm the cop that pulls behind the credit bureaus and says, hey, you guys are out of line. You didn't do this correctly. And
rip up the ticket.
Exactly.
All done.
Yeah. And you clean it up and, and it's something that it's kind of a cascading effect or a domino effect, right? Because once the credit moves down, then they can refinance a lot of their loans. They can move, whatever interest rates back down. And then the excess, I always tell them, if you're already paying this, right, it works. Use that excess to pay off any collections you have, anything else. If you're, because most of my clients have collections, they have some sort of debt, they have some sort of financial burden they have to fix that they otherwise could not fix without better credit to get these, secured loans or 0% interest credit cards, or I like to call it kind of free money or cheap money, right? Because otherwise with a 500 credit score, you're not getting those. You're getting very high APR credit cards. And now you're just kind of treading water.
We've talked about this too. Like you find that people end up getting, they get trapped. And now all of a sudden, you have all these different credit cards or loans, the interest rates are too high, you're barely paying the minimum payments and you really can't get ahead of the game because the interest rates are so high. So let's see, what are some other tips you could offer to somebody if they're not quite ready to give you a call, but they just kind of want to take some, steps on their own to see what they can do? What would you say would be the first thing that they should do?
Run your credit.
Run your credit and just look and see
run
what's
your
on
credit.
there.
See what's on there. You will probably be surprised.
Okay. And I think most of the credit bureaus, Equifax,
Experian,
TransUnion, yes, they have opportunities where somebody can file the disputes on their own, right?
That is probably top 3 worst ideas you can do.
Okay, don't do that.
And that's not even me trying to sell anything, right?
Yeah.
Because I tell people, I just made a video. I encourage people to go try this, but it's kind of like going to a hospital and telling them that they had malpractice and they need to investigate themselves.
Okay,
of course, the credit bureaus aren't going to find anything wrong, right? They're going to go, oh, we looked into it. Seems okay, right?
Looks right to us.
Or they're going to go, oh, we found an error, but don't worry. We updated that collection to make sure it's all good, right?
Gotcha.
And so that's where where my expertise come in, where, you hold them accountable and say, hey, this was wrong. You can't just fix it. This was wrong. You reported it wrong. And oftentimes, if it's so significant, there can be damages associated with it. And credit is not just loans. It's also your public record too, right? And so a lot of people, this is like a big one, huge one. And I may lose business by telling you this, but it's okay. I don't mind. Bankruptcies cannot be reported on your credit. It is public information is not furnished to the credit bureaus. They go through third-party public information companies like LexisNexis, right?
Okay.
And so they go and they pay for this. There's some sort of financial gain for these credit bureaus, and they report that. But there is no court order. There's never been a court order that says, hey, this person had bankruptcy, notify Experian.
Okay.
And so when you challenge that, they can't produce it and they remove it.
Oh.
And so,
interesting.
yeah. And so
that could potentially help somebody's credit score, right? I would imagine if they dispute that.
It's 100% guaranteed it will help their credit score.
But it might not change their options to do certain things. Like, let's say, for example, buying a house. If you have a bankruptcy within so many years, typically you can't qualify to buy a property. So would you say that would still be in place? Because they'd probably find it through one of these other third-party public record sites.
And so,
but it could still help their credit, in the meantime.
Exactly. And that's something that I specify to all my clients. Credit repair is not a magic, like Midland Collections, right? It's a huge collection company. They're not like, oh my God, this guy knew the secret phrase. He doesn't owe us any money anymore. That's not true. You still owe all these people money. These actions still did happen, right? You did still declare bankruptcy. So even if the bankruptcy is removed and you have, a 700 credit score, the lender's still going to see that.
Yeah.
That is still public record.
Okay.
There are other options that people can do, but I don't encourage them because you're basically committing mortgage fraud at that point.
Oh yeah, we don't want to.
And that's one
promote
thing.
That.
Well, exactly. And so that's one thing I do notify people, because there are the guarantee credit repairs, right?
Yeah.
And there are options where you can pay someone, $2,500 and you get an 800 credit score. And they can guarantee that because they're doing illegal things. And so I like to tell people that there are illegal credit repair companies out there that will do, whatever they need, whether it's a report or a fake police report, or whether they freeze your secondary reporting agencies and they dispute everything, and then the credit bureaus can't verify it. But all that stuff comes back.
Yeah, it always circles back around.
As soon as the smoke clears, it all comes back. And then if your mortgage company catches wind of that, it's not going to be good.
Oh no, yeah.
And so a lot of people, and so that's where a lot of people, they want it now, right? They want the credit fixed now, and that's great, right? And you can secure these loans,
right?
But if the mortgage company checks back into it,
all things buried come back to light at some point. Yeah, so be very careful. Make sure you're working with somebody.
Yeah, exactly. Somebody reputable, somebody with integrity, and that's why I tell people I don't guarantee anything. I don't guarantee like, hey, once I do these, you will have a 750 credit score or better.
Right.
Because you can't guarantee that.
So I know that you have a mortgage lender here in Las Vegas that you work with, I think, pretty often. I'm familiar with him. He's a great guy, has a great reputation in our industry. But I wanted to talk a little bit going back to like home loans. And, you might have some experience with this in working with your lender. But let's say, for example, I wanted to go and buy a house, and I know that my credit score is here based on my Experian credit reporting, right? But I also know that maybe if I can get it up 10 or 20 points, it will assist me in getting a better interest rate when it comes time to buying this other property or maybe this other car. There are these, like you mentioned earlier, credit simulators where you can, instead of somebody taking the guess, like, oh, let me just see if I do this, this, and this and see if it helps, you can actually get pretty specific, right? Where you could put it in the system. If you pay $200 off on this card and pay $88 off on this card, it will immediately or quickly increase your score X amount of points. So it takes the guesswork out. Can you tell us a little bit about how that works?
Yes.
And is that a service you assist with as well?
Yeah, and that's something where I try to make it as as simple or as take out the complexity, because people are like, oh, what if I do this and that and this and that?
Hmm.
It still comes back to the same rules. It's 30% utilization. And a big thing too that's really coming into play a lot lately is new credits. And so one of the things that was recently released in a report that, so I'm sure a lot of people see like the instant approval online, right?
Hmm.
So what they're actually running is your newest credit within the past year. If you've applied for more than 5 credit cards in the last year, you're going to be denied.
Yep.
And so everyone's like, oh, nobody really knows how they approve it. I do. And it actually, it's not that hard of knowledge to find.
Yeah.
And what they're only running your immediate credit, right? And so what you really want to do is you want to have your credit situated, and you want to have, so I mean, I'm sure you tell your clients too, no credit movement, right? When you're
Yeah.
shopping for a house.
Yep.
And even before that, I would tell people, I would say 3 to 6 months prior to even engaging in your pre-approval, your realtor discussion, is get your
Mhm.
credit situated.
Yeah.
Get that payment history going, get
Mhm.
that 30% down right there.
Mhm.
And don't apply for new credits. Like, I get it. There might be a new TV at Best Buy and they're offering 0% financing. You just
Yeah.
all you do is sign up for this
Don't
little
do
card,
it.
right? But the
It can
TV or
make
the
a big-
house,
yeah,
right?
exactly.
Do you want the house to put the TV in, or do
Buy
you
the
want
house first and then go get your
Exactly,
Best Buy
exactly.
credit card if you need to. That brings an interesting point too, because you talk about new credit, but it could be just as powerful to be very careful about old credit. Like sometimes people think, oh, I paid off all these credit cards, I'm going to go shut all these cards and close them. How can that have a pretty powerful impact in a negative way on someone's credit by closing cards?
Yeah, so there's 5 points or 5 sections of your credit score, and payment history and utilization make up 65%.
Mhm.
The third biggest is age of credit.
Yep.
And so there's no credit that's weighed more than another. So that Best Buy card you open weighs just as much as that 10-year mortgage you have.
Mhm.
And so when people close old credit accounts, there's no way to salvage that, right?
Yep.
And so you're moving that average smaller or to a shorter lifespan when you do that. So I tell people one of the worst things you can do short of like bankruptcy and collections is close old accounts.
Close old accounts. Yeah.
And people are like, well, what if I'm just not using it? Just go buy gas.
Yeah.
And it's not even the amount of money, it's payment history, right?
Yep.
And so a lot of people are like, oh, well, Sears isn't in business. I literally had a client, well, Sears not in business anymore. I should close the card. Well, okay, you probably won't shop at Sears anymore and get those, but you can still go get $20 in gas,
Yeah.
once a month and keep that card open, because her card was 7 years old. That's a
Mhm.
huge account,
Yeah.
right? And even though it has $1,000 on it, it's still a huge account. And on top of that, that may be the make or break if your credit's right on the line, that the lender, there's a human that reviews that when you do a
Mhm.
mortgage, and they may say, okay, well, this person has very long history. Whereas if you're closed on that, now your average age is 3 years. I'm like, okay, I don't really know
They
about
don't
this
really
person.
have yeah.
Yeah. And so that's where it kind of makes sense to keep those open. And they're what's called seasoned accounts. It's any account older than 5 years.
Yep. I have, I think one of my very first major credit cards I got, I don't know, it was probably 18 or 19 years old at Bank of America. So it is at risk of saying my age here for everybody to know. But that card is over 20 years old now. And it's one of those that like, I will never close that one no matter what. I don't care how mad they make me, just because, I mean, the 20-year credit history on that one card is, feels like, okay,
Exactly.
it makes a difference. So anyways, let's go back to, you just had 2 beautiful babies. Congratulations on your twin girls. They
Thank you.
literally so cute. And I love them filling up the news feed all over social media. But what is your plan and your goal to help set your daughters or your children up for amazing credit when they turn 18? What kind of advice could you give to other parents out there on what they should be thinking about as their kids approach adulthood?
So a lot of people think opening a credit card in your child's name is a great idea. I caution that
Okay.
because if you have a credit card that you open in your child's name, 1, they can't swipe it. That's illegal.
Okay.
And 2, you run the risk of closing it by not using it. So now your kid starts out with closed accounts instead of open and good accounts.
Okay.
And so what I tell people, the best kind of, I guess, education is truly education, right? Sitting your children down and saying, hey, like, even though you're 18 and like you're young and free and wild, this is going to have consequences later on.
Mhm.
And so one of the things that I tell people to start out with is, get your kids a good financial education, and also starting a savings account is, crucial, and looking into 529 college funds or
Mhm.
other non-taxable accounts, and then giving your children access to that later on so that they can use that to build other large credit accounts, like buying a house
Mhm.
or getting a car. And then on top
Or
of
not going into student loan debt right out the gate. That's a difficult one. You're 18 years old. You probably don't even have a job if you're trying to go to school full time. And now all of a sudden you have this huge financial burden of student loan debt that's going to follow you forever.
and student loan debt's actually an interesting one because it is the only loan that can never be forgiven. The only way you can be forgiven of student loan debt is when you die.
Hmm.
And so it can be deferred, right? There's many
Mhm.
deferment opportunities for teachers and other, social work type careers. But there's a lot of come to realization moments. Like my brother, he's 25. I remember he graduated at 23, right?
Mhm.
Exciting,
Yeah.
whatever. Well, he got a letter, right? Hey, your first payment's due. And he
He's
thought,
like,
well, I don't even have a job. Like, what am I
yeah.
gonna do? And like, they don't care, right?
Yeah.
You signed, and it's great
Time to
because when
pay
you're
the piper.
18, yeah, you
Mhm.
just sign here, and this free money's gonna hit your bank account.
Mhm.
And so I think honestly, the best thing really is teaching your kids that nobody gets free lunch,
Yeah.
right? And whatever your financial success looks like, whether it's going to school, a trade school, starting to work right out of college, just building those financial habits, right? And knowing that literally there is no such thing as free money. Um,
So what about, I did this for one of my kids, so I'm curious to see what your thoughts were, if I did the right thing or the wrong thing. I think I have a good idea for myself, but I have a 21-year-old daughter. When she turned 18, I did not open up a credit card for her in her own name, but what I did is that same Bank of America credit card that I've had for 20 years, I added her as an authorized user on my account. And then I just made sure that I took great care of that card, kept it under the 30% utilization that you're recommending. And again, now all of a sudden, within, I would say, a year of her 18th birthday, when I added her, she was in a 700 FICO score fairly quickly and had a credit history. So of course, pending parents are responsible with their own credit, would you recommend that could be a good option to help, other children step into, instead of spending 5 or 10 years trying to build decent credit? I mean, it takes years to get into the 700 sometimes, right, for people. But this might be a little booster to help them get there.
That's actually there's an entire industry called trade lines that do that exact thing: is add people as authorized users on very seasoned accounts.
Okay.
And so what you did was you basically gave her a booster
Yeah.
into good credit, and that's a great idea. It's one of the best things you can do, right? Because you're in complete control of that account. It's not going to get closed.
Yeah.
There's payment history, everything such as that. And so, that's a great option. I do advise that for people that do have good credit, but oftentimes, like I said, not many people have that,
Yeah.
or they have bad credit, or they have bad spending habits, and you kind
Right.
of need to protect from that.
So then if that same 18-year-old doesn't have the parent who is able to assist with that booster, then that 18-year-old, the best thing they could do, again, is, a little bit of financial literacy, but, opening up that secured credit card and then just starting slowly, making sure you're taking good care. You got a $300 secured credit card. You make a payment every month, obviously, but keep it under the $100 mark as far as charges.
Yeah. So credit unions are your best friend when you have no credit, right? Because they're local. You can go talk to somebody. You can go in there, shake their hand.
Mhm.
You can establish that relationship quickly, right? And so here, like America First is a huge one. Southern Nevada schools. There's a Clark County schools, I think, is
Yeah.
one of them. But that's one you can go in. You can present yourself. You can say, hey, I just turned 18. And banks want those kind of customers, right? Because it's a good gamble. If you're willing to walk in and say, hi, my name's Glenn. I'm 18. I want to get my credit going. They're gonna go, okay, this customer probably is not gonna fall delinquent.
Mhm.
And the cool thing about a secure credit card, so for anyone that doesn't know what a secure credit card is, you're basically fronting the bill up front, right? So you're kind of given the pool of money to where if you make the payment, it comes out of that. So the bank really has no risk
Mhm.
other than the actual plastic they're printing, which is pennies on the dollar. And so it helps build the credit. And then a lot of times I tell clients that don't have credit is you can you can actually have your landlords report your payments.
Oh, yeah. You had mentioned something about this on one of your TikToks recently. So
Yeah.
tell us a little bit about that, this new.
So I don't like to throw out companies, right? Because each one has its own pros and cons. But you can Google reporting your rent, your utilities. Even some companies will report cell phone bills.
Okay.
And up until recently, those were terrible for your credit, right? Because they never helped; they only hurt.
Oh,
So
wow.
yeah, so when you're delinquent, because I'm a landlord, right, and I have the option to report once they miss their 30 days. I can report, right, and
Mhm.
normally nobody wins, right, because then they're like, all right, this guy doesn't care, blah blah blah. But landlords can report your payments And it's really simple, right? All the
in a
landlord,
positive way now.
correct. And
So it would not be something that I, as the renter, could do. I would have to approach my landlord and see if they would
Yep.
assist in helping.
Yep,
Okay.
and there's no cost for landlords with most of these companies. And again, a simple Google search will find, just report my rent to my credit, and there's 5 or 6 companies, and some companies offer reward points for their services. Some
Uh-huh.
companies offer credit cards in conjunction to that, to where once they see like a year worth of reported rent, they're like, okay, this person's probably safe to send a credit card to.
So let's just say, because this is fascinating, actually very interesting information. If I have been renting for the last year or 2 years from the same landlord, and all of a sudden I hear this option, is that something that could be retro,
Mhm.
or
Yep.
is it just moving forward?
Yep.
So, and then how do they confirm that? It's just the landlord just says, yes, they've been paying me on time for the last 2 years, or do you have to pull bank statements and show that the funds have cleared the account at a certain time, or how does that work?
What is it? It's
Do
a
you know?
1099-K, I believe it is, where you report your rental income. And
Okay.
so that's also itemized out as a landlord, right? So I can tell you every single rent that I charge, and I can tell you what's paid. I can even show you why I charge that, right?
Right.
So landlords will have that. Well, hopefully landlords will have that information.
That's
And
a broad statement that
yes.
landlords would have it. Maybe not.
And so there's multiple ways you can do that, right? You can associate a lease with the payments and say, hey, this lease was satisfied over 12 months or whatever duration the lease was.
Okay.
And then you can say, I certify as your creditor in this point, right? Because
Yeah.
you're crediting the lease.
Okay.
And you're saying, hey, from January 2021 to January 2022, there were 12 increments of this amount of money that were satisfied by this person. And I certify that as a landlord that this was a debt settled.
Wow.
And so, and it really doesn't cost the landlord any amount of money. Now, there are options for these companies to be paid, right?
Okay.
So that's where the renter would have to pay. Some of them range from 10 to 20 to some are 50. And
Still could be a really great value for $50 to get a year worth of on-time credit payment history, potentially boost your credit. Who knows, 10, 20, 30 points. I would imagine any boost is probably worth it. I would think so.
Exactly. And some of these companies will actually reach out to the utility companies, right? So
Mhm.
NV Energy out here, and they'll say, hey, we're acting on behalf of this client. Their account number is such and such. Can you provide a statement when this client started service and if they're current, right? And that's all they need to supply. And
Wow.
NV Energy will send it over. And you
So
get
these
credit
could be
for all of
more
that.
options of like that gentleman that you had that came to you in his 40s. He probably has been paying rent every month and paying his cell phone bill and paying Cox cable and all the things.
Yeah.
And now all of a sudden could potentially build his credit fairly quickly.
And also, I mean, there's even more options, right? So let's call a spade a spade. There are, stay-at-home moms that need to establish credit. Maybe they need to go buy a car or whatever. They don't really have anything in their name, right? Because
Mhm.
the husband's paid whatever. Or, there's many situations where
Right.
people aren't just 18, they may be in their 20s, 30s, 40s, even 50s, right?
Right.
And they've never financed anything
Right.
through various means. And so there's lots of options.
That was my parents.
Exactly.
Literally their whole life never financed anything, I don't think.
And that's why I tell people, make sure that you are in good standing, right? Because you don't want to pull bad credit.
Yeah.
But a lot of landlords, I don't see why you wouldn't. There's really not a benefit to not doing it.
Yeah.
And so, as a landlord, I would cooperate with that. It's really not that big of a deal.
Yeah.
And I haven't had any of my tenants do that.
Mhm.
But I actually haven't rented in I don't know how long, but I would like to see somebody do it and see the process. I've read their FAQs on many of the websites, but it's always cool to see the process and see it actually come to fruition and see it hit the credit report. I can tell you what it looks like on the credit report because I pulled many credit reports, and it does come in as self-reporting,
Okay.
and I can see what it is. So, and this is where some of the companies differ. So some of the cheaper ones will only report to like TransUnion. TransUnion is a big one. TransUnion is very, very, very particular. And so like when I pull people's credit reports, usually Experian and Equifax will have like 1 or 2 addresses, 1 or 2 names. Opposite, like married women will have their maiden name, stuff like that. TransUnion will have like their uncle's name and like all kinds of wild stuff, like
Yeah.
12 addresses,
Yep.
all kinds of stuff. And so TransUnion's a real easy one. Their reporting structure is a lot looser. And so some of the more expensive ones report to all 3.
Okay.
And so as not all lenders pull from all 3 bureaus. Sometimes a pre-approval only comes from one credit right? And so, especially car dealerships have their special one that they like to pull from.
Yes.
And so it may behoove people to research which credit bureaus are reported to, because a lot of them will just say, we report to credit bureau. Well, they don't say that it's just TransUnion, and maybe the car dealership you're going to pulls from Experience. So now you've paid for a service that didn't help you.
Yeah. Makes sense. Okay. What other good credit advice could you give us?
The big one is, like I said, money's not free. And also read your credit card statements. So I can't tell how many times that American Express has mixed up my account with someone else, or I disputed a charge and they just didn't do anything with it, or anything like that. And so in that same nature, read your medical bills. I can't tell how many people have had medical bills where there generally was not a service rendered. You have to think these hospitals have thousands of people coming in and out every single day.
Yeah.
Their medical billing and coding people are not, are not always
I mean,
on
it's
top
really
of their
just
stuff.
a person entering in some information, so it's easy to make mistakes.
And people just assume, oh, it's just going to be a big medical bill. Well, look at that itemization. You know what I mean? And, it may be that they rang you up for 50 Tylenol and they meant to ring you up for 5. Tylenol is like $20 a pop there. So, it's a lot.
Yeah.
And two, a lot of people don't know what explanation of benefits is, and that's what your insurance covers, right? And that they'll send out a statement saying, hey, we covered this and this and this and this. Make sure those match, because a lot of times the hospital bill will be like, oh, well, we didn't think they'd cover this, we didn't submit it. And if you're looking at like MRIs or CAT scans, these are very expensive procedures.
Yeah.
And most insurances cover them, but if they're not submitted, they're not going to cover them, and then that just goes right back to your bill.
Yeah.
The only person that hurts is you. And
is that something that, let's say, I feel like, okay, this is like way over my head, I don't really understand. Are those do you offer those types of services to people? Like, I guess what I'm thinking is, instead of a one-time service of credit help, like, do you offer like ongoing, almost like a consultations or consultant? You're my credit consultant.
So we do the repair process, right? And so our initial first month is $250, and that is that comes with a consultation. The plan, we offer a budget if people want it. And then we offer $50 a month past that for every single month, and they cancel as soon as they feel that their credit is wherever they want it. With that, every month, I have people, I literally had a person yesterday just text me and say, hey man, just to update you, I'm going to try to get my truck lemon law. And so he's like, I hired a lemon lawyer. Can you take a look at this? I'm not a lawyer, so I don't offer legal advice, and I do specify that to people.
Right.
But, I'll answer that, right? And I'll take a look and give my opinion on it. I try to shy away from medical bills because that is HIPAA. And just because someone says take a look at my medical bill does not mean they're actually giving you consent.
Yeah.
And so there is a slippery slope, and there's a lot of things that I will look at. So something that I do offer is taking a look at car loans.
Okay.
Because dealerships, how many times have you heard of someone like, oh, my payment was going to be $300, and I went back and they called me back and now my payment's $420, and I don't know what happened.
Yep.
And
all of a sudden they couldn't get me that interest rate that they said that they could get me. And now that I've already fell in love with the car, I've had it for a week.
Isn't it crazy they just let you and they're like, oh yeah, just take it home and we'll figure it out, right? And then they
just
call
kidding,
you back.
we need a bigger down payment. Or
and so there's a tax to that. And also a lot of people know this, dealerships are not legally obligated to show you the best rates you qualified for.
Yeah.
Because they sell your loan, right? So they make that extra % or 2, right? And so if you qualify for 3%, why would they show you that when they can sell your loan for 5%?
Yep.
Still a decent loan, right?
Yeah.
Not too bad,
right.
Especially in this market. But they're not legally obligated to show you that, oh, America First is going to qualify you for 2.5% over, a shorter time and all that stuff.
I think you kind of talked about this before on one of your social media videos, is that the dealerships, more often than not, are not going to be the best interest rates for you, and that you're really in a better position if you kind of do a little bit of homework before you buy a car and start talking to some of the, like a credit union or your financial institution to see what kind of interest rate they can offer you before you even go to the dealership. So, you could ideally be able to get the best rate and then take that money in and go buy the vehicle you're looking for.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like, think about like door-to-door sales, right? It's kind of like that, right? If you go over to your friend's house, they're probably going to listen to your sales pitch. You start knocking on doors, they don't really care, right? And so that's how them shopping your credit around is. And also, going back to people getting paid for credit, dealers get paid for every application they send in, right? So I guess we're just going to destroy Bank of America on this podcast.
I know, we do not mean to destroy Bank of America. It's easy.
Luckily,
Everybody knows who they are.
They can't cancel me.
They're going to cancel me. That's the credit card I have for like 20 years.
But and so like all these banks, right? They pay to have these applications sent over to them. So America First, Clark County Schools, all these banks, they want these applications, right? Because it's an attempt to make interest, do all this stuff, right?
Mhm.
So they're gonna pay anywhere from $5 to $100 per application sent out. So all
Mhm.
dealers are like, hey man, I shopped around to get the best rate. No, they made $500
Yeah.
off the back by sending out your application to 30
Oh my
different
gosh.
banks.
So this reminds me of a story. One of the first cars I remember ever buying at a dealership. And it was like one of those budget car sales or something like
Buy
that.
here,
It
pay
wasn't,
here.
yeah. And I think that I found out like a month later, they had pulled my credit like 12 or 17 times or something outrageous. And of course, that was we're trying, and I'm 18, 19. I don't know anything from anything. So they had pulled it so many times and it like totally plummeted my score, I remember at that point. And they were just like, oh, well, that's what we have to do to go shop it around.
And so many people take that
Okay.
at face value. And like, oh, well, I guess like people are
It
like,
is
oh,
what it
that's just
is.
part of the process. And
Yeah.
it's truly not. And 9 times out of 10, the dealers will go, oh, we only give you these perks, this price if you finance with us, because they
Yeah.
know on the backside they're going to make 2 or 3 grand
Right.
just selling your loan off,
Right.
or even just shopping it around. And so that's why I tell people, go to your credit union, right? Because if you already have a secured loan, maybe you have a credit card with them, they're going to be like, okay, this guy or this girl pays their debts,
Mhm.
they're a good customer.
Mhm.
Let's knock a couple points off the interest rate, right? And so
Mhm.
let's because we want to continue getting their business.
Yeah.
And so, there's a competitive edge that they want to achieve. They want to be that, that bank. And right. So America First with me, I think I've done 6 cars through them at this point, a
Mhm.
Razor, right? At this point, when I got my Raptor, I literally called them and said, hey, I'm going to go ahead and I want to buy this car. I know you guys need the VIN, but I don't have it right now. And she said, oh, what do you think it's going to be? And I said, I think it's going to be, this amount of money. She said, oh yeah, we'll send over to the dealership. They didn't run my credit, right?
Yeah.
Because I have,
But you
several
have
hundred
history
thousand
with
dollars
them.
worth of vehicles paid off through them. And so they're
Mhm.
like, oh, this guy's, he's good for it, right?
Yeah.
And so in essence, the banks are kind of old fashioned like that, right?
Right.
And so there is kind of that handshake agreement that's still prevalent.
Yeah.
And maybe you don't get that through these larger Fortune 500 banks,
Yeah.
whereas you could get that through your credit union where you can go in, shake their hand, you can talk
Yeah.
to them, you can see the branch manager. They're right
The
there.
relationships are still important, although everybody wants to act like, we've moved past that time in life and everything's tech savvy and technology and digital. But it's really not, especially like you said, when you're dealing with bankers I have accounts at Wells Fargo and I always find it interesting, but I still get calls from my banker like once a month. Hey, how you doing? How's it going? Is there anything I could do to help you with? And it's interesting to know that those relationships are still out there. And that's really the majority of people still want to work that way. And you could benefit from it. Like you said, get
And
yourself the best deal.
it's important to shop around too. So a fun fact that a lot of people may not know is Capital One does not have a human interaction for credit cards anymore.
Okay.
So applications, credit limit increases, all that stuff, that's all automated. And so that's where they're going to pull, like I said, the first year or 2 of your credit, see what you've been doing. And if you've been applying for all these credit cards, denied, because you probably need money, right? That's
Mhm.
probably why you're going after a credit
Yep,
limit
it's a
increase.
big red flag.
And so you don't even get that person to talk to you and say, hey, well, what I'm really going after is we have a kid on the way and I'm trying to buy all these baby clothes,
Mhm.
whatever. Whereas, at Wells Fargo, they may be like, oh my gosh, that's something that, we can work with. Whereas, like Capital One, may not,
Nothing.
may not get that.
Yeah.
However, in the same breath, people that are starting out, Capital One, Citibank, those are really, really good cards
Yeah.
to start out with because their approval rate is through the roof. It's,
Yeah.
it's nearly 100%.
I think that one of my first credit cards before even that Bank of America one was a Capital One card. Now it was outrageous. I think it was like a 28% interest rate, but whatever. It did its job.
And it's a stepping stone, right? And
Yeah.
so, and that's another thing that I kind of talk to people about is like when you get into these higher credit scores, you get these cards that, so like right now I have a Wells Fargo card. It was 18 months, 0% interest, right? And if you paid on time for 3 months, you got 21 months, 0%, right?
Mhm.
So that's basically a virtual emergency fund that I have on tap whenever I need it.
Yeah.
Who doesn't take card in 2023?
Yeah.
And so I just have it in my wallet, and God forbid something happened to my family, I know I've got that amount of money that's 0%. It's not going to cost me to borrow anything.
Mhm.
And it's on there. Whereas if you're in the 500 credit score, you're not going to get access to these options,
Yeah.
right? Because you don't have the track record. And then on top of that, we can get into all the travel perks or, the cashback options.
Yeah.
I think, there's an Amex card. I think it's like a 650 credit score, a little bit higher, that offers 5% on cashback on gas. Who's not buying gas? You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
right.
And so if you got 5 cents off every gallon you spend on gas, that adds up after a while.
So do you think that this is just something that I'm wondering your opinion on it? You had said before that, 3 lines of credit, right? 3 credit cards and your loan. What are your thoughts or recommendations on having too many? So let's say you have your, that credit card that's going to be the best on cash back for gas purchases. And then you have your travel credit card through your favorite airline. And then you have, whatever, like you end up with 10 different cards that each serve a different benefit for one thing or another. Like I have my Costco credit card. I have my Sam's Club credit card. So what are your thoughts on those? I mean, is there ever an opportunity to have too much credit where it could be negatively impacting you? Or as long as you're keeping those ratios in line and you're making your payments and you're managing it properly, you should be fine.
Not really too much. The one thing that'll affect is your average age, right? So if you go out and get 10 credit cards tomorrow, when they finally hit your bank account, your average age is going to, go way down. But if you're responsibly using those, so like myself, I have a Best Buy card and a Home Depot card. Mm-hmm. And so those both offer 12 months, 0%. And that way I know, if the fridge went out or the washer or whatever, I know we can go and get whatever we need, 0% for 18 months. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So it's not like, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? It's like, what color do we want? You know what I mean? And so it's nice to have those. But I would tell people that you want to do it in reason, right? And so, there's a school of thought out there that says every month you should open a new credit card, and that way, when they all season, it kind of moves as a big glob. Huh. And I don't agree with that.
Yeah.
For people that are established, someone that has a home, has their car, they're not concentrating cars in, maybe that's fine. That works.
Maybe, yeah.
But for the average consumer, I would say maybe 2 cards a year, maybe every 6 months, or you can do back to back. It really depends. I get at least one new 0% interest credit card every year to constantly cycle that. And that way I constantly have that 0% open. So like case in point, right? We just moved into our house in August with this great pool cover, right? It moves in and out. It's all electric, except when it ripped.
Yeah.
And, you can't just replace them. So it's $3,500.
Yeah.
That's a pretty big expense for, anyone really.
Yeah. And so, you had just bought a new house. You just had 2 babies.
Yeah. And so that 0% credit card, it wasn't even a big deal, right? I have 18 months to pay that off. That's a much more manageable. I can break that down to bite size. I think come out like $220 a month or something like that, right?
Right.
That's much easier than, oh my goodness gracious, what are we going to do? And that's with any purchase, right? And you never life's never like, oh, you seem like financially stable. Here's a nice bill, right? It's always when you just had another bill or something else happened or, something else. And so having that 0% interest credit card really can be a lifesaver,
open
right?
And available.
And so instead of having to pay interest on an emergency, you now have that. And it frees up your cash to other things too.
Yeah. Let's go to some of these. We joked with each other a little bit about using the artificial intelligence. So we pulled up some fun questions that people like to ask for credit repair. So let's see. What information do you need in order to begin a credit repair process? You said that, you got that $250 consultation fee. They come in, get it all set up. What are you asking them to bring? Pretty much just themselves and their social security number?
Not even. I just need the last 4. So I need to send off letters to dispute. I have to have proof of identity, which is a utility bill and your driver's license. And most people have that.
Okay.
And if they don't, I have clients that are not head of household. They do not have utilities in their name. Any bill that has their address. And then I pull the credit myself. I have a service, Credit Hero Score. It's $20 a month and it monitors everything for identity theft, credit, any sort of swings up or down. It'll send both of us an email so I can kind of combat that. And really just, like I said, it's the $250 and then just willingness to work on it. Credit repair is not quick.
Yeah.
A lot of people want to know, well, how long does it take? I tell people 3 to 9 months.
That was actually my next question. It says, how long does it typically take to repair credit?
And it really depends. It's kind of like asking someone, how long it'll take to
lose weight, right?
Yeah, right.
Like it depends on how much you have to lose, and it depends on how hard you work towards that goal in the next 30 days.
If you've got 4 hours a day to burn and you can go sit in saunas and go to the gym, you're going to shed it off. But if you're like all of us and you've got maybe an hour you can squeeze in somewhere, it's going to take you a few months.
It's going to take a little longer.
I just tell people, you have to kind of be open to the process, right? It took you a long time to get in the credit situation you're in, so it's going to take a long time to get back out. Mm-hmm. And the time's going to pass regardless. Mm-hmm. 2023 is going to keep moving, whether you repair your credit or not. Yeah. And something I also tell people is you're paying for bad credit regardless, so it doesn't make sense to not pay to fix it.
Yep.
And so
no, in the long run, it's an investment. It'll save you a lot of money in the back end. An upfront cost of $250, and maybe now's a great time to do it. It's tax season. People are probably going to be getting some tax returns. Maybe instead of taking that vacation to California that you've been wanting to do, spend $250, start working on your credit, and
Disney's going to be there next year.
yeah, Disney will be there next year. Exactly.
And not even that too. I mean, the average consumer is overpaying by $100 to $150 a month just because of poor credit in the 5 to 550 credit score, right? And so if you have a mortgage, you're probably close to $300
Yeah.
overpaid, right? And so I forget the number, but I believe it was for every 20 points your credit improves, you save $50 on your mortgage.
Yep.
And so, obviously, the mortgage company is going to call you up, be like, hey, we heard your credit score dropped. You want to save some money? However, once you season a mortgage, you can refinance it, and there are incentives on that stuff too. And so I tell people in the long run, it literally doesn't make sense to have bad credit.
Yeah. So if you can kind of just be a little forward thinking, let me say I'm going to set aside $500 or $1,000 out of my tax return or my savings account or whatever that is, and I'm going to dedicate and invest this money and this energy into repairing my credit this year, you might find yourself next year in a position where you're paying $500 less a month in your bills because now you've been able to get your credit card interest rates down, your auto interest rates down, your mortgage interest rates down. And so it really is good, a little investment now could be a huge return for your, bang for your buck next year.
Well, even more than that. So a lot of people know your car insurance rates are actually based on your credit as well.
Oh yeah, that too. Very true.
Yeah. And so there's so many things that are based on your credit. And these days, I mean, they don't even care what your name is. It's credit score straight off the bat, right?
Yeah.
And so any large purchase, any sort of long-term investment by a company is going to be based on your credit score, because that's all they really care about is the fact whether you pay your bills or not.
So I would say, just like you just said, it doesn't make sense not to do it. Do not let the $250 or the $50 a month be the reason that you're not doing it, because all you're doing is continuing kicking the, can down the road, where if you, make that small investment now, maybe don't go buy the new, whatever it is, maybe new Nikes or something, start working on your credit. And then you could buy those Nikes at 0% interest next year if you wanted to.
And even on top of that too, if you took the money that you saved, even if you saved $100 a month and you invested that into like an S&P 500 stock fund or any other,
anything,
there's thousands of ETFs and mutual funds and stuff like that, it compounds on itself. Or you take the $100 and you pay your mortgage down, right? And you get out, you stop paying the interest, start paying on the principal. I think on the average, what is it? $300,000 mortgage, you pay $100 a month. I think you pay your mortgage off 3.5 years earlier. Or something like that.
Or those extra, payments towards the principal. If you're in like an FHA product or a conventional with PMI, you could put yourself in a position, very quickly to get that PMI off your loan. Now all of a sudden you have $300 or $400 extra a month that you're saving on that mortgage, which is huge. That could be a car payment. That could be whatever, like you said, investments into your children's financial, education or any of those kinds of things. So super important, like you said, all these different things that it's unfortunate that with somebody who has negative credit, bad credit, or less than perfect credit, less than good credit, then you're paying 2, 3, 4 times more than those people that have the good credit for the same things in life. And it's really kind of just puts you in this perpetual cycle that's difficult to get out of.
I mean, the system is designed to be punitive to people that have bad credit, and it's designed to trap them in the bad credit so that they are, just satisfied enough, that they stay in the hamster on the wheel, right? And that's what literally credit is designed to do, right?
Yep.
And so once you beat it, there's unlimited possibilities. And on top of that, I mean, they're getting into real estate, even investing, right? Because I'm sure nobody's like, oh, I have a 500 credit score, I can probably buy rentals next year. But realistically, you probably can. And you can secure these rates that are much better. And then when you look at what you're saving over your loan, when you look at the life of the loan, you're saving literally tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars. Just by a couple points.
Well, I think that we've pretty much used up our time here today in our podcast session. So thank you again for coming. But I do want to give everybody an opportunity to reach out to you directly if they have any specific questions or concerns. So what would be the best way to reach you?
You can find us on Facebook at D&G Financial Consulting. You can text me or call me at 702-389-9319. Or we have TikTok. We just launched YouTube today. Facebook, all that stuff.
And I'll do my part too. And any of the videos that we share with you and the conversations regarding credit repair, I will also make sure I attach your contact information. But thank you again for joining us. Hopefully that with your help, we might be able to find some people that could, get on the road to financial freedom through credit repair and, put them in a better position no matter what it is that they're struggling with right now.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Thanks again, Glenn.
Thank you.
Talk to you later.